Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
All right, well, I have a lot of authors on our shows. I love books. I love the authors that we choose. And they're quite diverse. Lately, I've had people from the Holocaust. I've had people who travel a lot. But I always wind up really favoring, I hate to say that, favoring people who write about aging. Because, of course, that's been my field. And I had this lovely book from Pat Flury called You're Never Too Young to Defy Aging. And, actually, why don't I let you tell me what that really means to you? What does that sentence mean? You're never too young to defy aging.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me again.
It's a pleasure.
The book is doing very well, I'm happy to say. And lately, several people have asked me about it, and they intend to give it as Christmas gifts.
Great.
So that certainly makes me happy. But several people have asked me why I used the title I did, and that is You're Never Too Young and to Defy Aging, thinking perhaps it would be a better title to say You're Never Too Old. But, what it really means is that the earlier in life you start to think about these things, the more likely you are to live a long and healthful life. So the earlier you start, the better. We look back now and we say, well, perhaps I should not have smoked when I was a teenager. Or maybe I should not have been such a heavy drinker. Or maybe I should have exercised. Maybe I shouldn't have gained so much weight.
A lot of shoulds, huh?
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Why don't we just start younger and then we don't have to do the shoulda, coulda, woulda?
But Pat, I have read a lot of books on research since this is my field, and it's proven that even people in their 80s, if they're put into exercise programs and into nutritional programs, they can get back a lot of their life.
Well, there are many studies that prove you to be correct there, not only with exercise, but with eating, foods they eat. And the other thing, there's even a lot of studies that indicate that people who do stop smoking at perhaps age 70, they still can gain some benefits.
No, they can, because I know when I have a lot of physicians on my radio shows, no matter whether they're a cardiac surgeon or they're a brain surgeon or they're orthopedic surgeons, the first thing they say is stop smoking.
For sure.
No matter what, because they know what that does. And, of course, I know people. In fact, I'm very close to some people, not in my own family, and they smoke, and I've tried in my own way to encourage them, but I can't do that. They don't. They will have to stop when they want. And then, unfortunately, I've had a lot of friends who were smokers, and they've passed away from lung disease, which goes to the brain. And, look, we never know. Every day we never know if we're going to live, but it's better to reduce the chances.
Exactly. There's so many people that know someone, or there's someone in their family that's 90 or 95 years old that smoked all their life or drank all their life. Those are individual episodes. That's not what's most common. What's most common is those who smoke most likely are going to develop either cardiovascular disease or lung disease, and their livelihood is not going to be what it could be.
When their family suffers. I mean, it's selfish in a way, because they have people who love them and who now you just are going to cause a lot of pain. I want you to know that Pat Flury is not a typical author, because many of my authors have been writers or they've been in some a lesser field. But I was very impressed with Pat's background. She's a retired healthcare executive. She was actually chief executive officer of Full Service Hospital and the chief operating officer one of the United States' largest public health care systems, and you would know that if you're listening to the show in South Florida. It was Memorial Health Care System. She also was, she's even in retirement. She was elected as a public officer and served as a city commissioner, as mayor, and as commissioner for 10 years. Of course, she has fun, so she loves to boat and fish, especially in the Florida Keys and in the Bahamas. And she likes to play golf and tennis, but I have to tell you that she came in today and handed me two things. She introduced me to her friend, who's an avid fisherman, and they caught this dolphin, which was all frozen and packaged for me, which is the sweetest thing for you to do. And she gives me a book called Eat Fish, Live Longer, a recipe book for healthier living. And I'm just, and is the lady's name Lee out there?
Yes, that's Lee. Lee is a boat captain and an avid fisherman.
Oh, my heavens. This was such a treat. You just caught me off guard. I am just beyond myself with everything that you've done here because I love fish. And my husband is 92, going on 93. He's in very good health. And I do try to have fish at least 2 times, even more, maybe tuna fish during the afternoon. But it's very important that people eat fish, but a lot of people don't know how to prepare fish. But I do.
You do.
I
Good.
learned. I had a friend who came who was in the restaurant business, and I was making swordfish years ago. And he watched me. He said, no. You don't know what you're doing. Okay. And he showed me certain things about it, and then I used that on other fish. Now, the one key is you have to have fresh fish, just like this dolphin. Fresh fish, you can't do anything wrong with it, right?
Yes. Well, you can overcook it.
Oh, yeah, we don't overcook.
That's the only thing. The only way you can ruin fresh fish is to overcook it, and unfortunately, many people do.
Well, you're so right, and I think what happened when we started, the Japanese brought sushi here. For years, we didn't have sushi. I mean, 20, 30 years ago.
That's true.
And you're eating raw fish. So when you're cooking, why would you overcook something? You could actually almost eat it raw.
Yes.
When I cook my salmon, I do it on the top and the bottom, and as long as it's pink in the side or almost red, that's it for me.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's funny. Oh, I do so many things with my fish, and this is not a program about fish. It's about eat fish, live longer, and so let's keep to that. There are a lot of people, as I said before, that don't eat fish because they don't know how to cook it. So what I suggest that you do is there are certain kinds of frozen fish that are just plain, but they are frozen, and they already have a little something on them, and you just have to put them into the oven. It's better than not having fish. Don't you agree?
Well, it is better than not having fish,
right.
But it's also better than having supposedly fresh fish from the market that's not fresh.
Talk about that.
Well, when you go to the market to buy your fish, you really should buy the fish whole so you can take a look at it and look at its eyes. If those eyes are cloudy and that is not a fresh fish.
You want a fish to look at you directly.
Those eyes
right?
should be bright, as bright can be, and you know that's a fresh fish. But that's the worst thing you could do is to buy supposedly fresh fish that's been kicking around for 5 or 6 days. That is not healthy.
The only other kind of fish I don't buy is I don't buy any fish that comes from farm fish.
Farm raised.
I don't do that.
No.
Because that's not really the fresh fish. They're in whatever. So am I right in knowing not to do that?
I think you're right. There may be some people that don't agree with that.
I don't eat tilapia anymore because they're all
we do not
there.
ever eat farm-raised fish.
Right, I don't
either.
either.
They live and grow in their own poop, basically.
Right, no, exactly. No, I don't. I'm glad. See, I never said that to anybody because there are people that want to serve me tilapia, and I know that tilapia comes from that way, and I don't know. Thank you. I don't. I'm not interested. But the other thing that I'd like to talk about fish really is that you can add so many recipes. Fried. We know we don't want to eat fried food, but you can do a lightly, with some flour on the outside. Mm-hmm. But I use it's getting to be a food program, but that's okay because I'm going to live longer, right? And better, not just longer. I use a lot of chicken broth when I'm cooking. Then
yes,
a little
I do
bit.
Too. Just a little bit,
right? Or a little coconut oil, depending on what I'm doing with the fish. But I also have oodles of fresh tomatoes, and I chop them up and just throw them into when I'm cooking the fish. And it's fresh tomatoes, so it's fabulous.
Excellent.
So all of a sudden, the fish does have something.
Well, this may not be a food show.
I love it anyway.
However,
we're going to have you back to have a food show.
But we know that you are what you eat. We know that the foods you eat are going to make a difference in your longevity. If we all live on hamburgers and French fries and sweet rolls, your longevity really has got to be in questions. And it's really part of the book that that we have here. You're never too young to defy aging, because food is such an important part of our livelihood. It's food, it's exercise, it's not smoking, and it's all about getting up and get moving. And by the way, I'm not going to tell how old you are. I really don't know.
Oh,
but
I'm
80 years old.
I'm 78.
Well, I'm older than you. I'm
Just
80 years old.
But we're all the
I
same.
play tennis every week. I play golf, and I offshore fish a lot.
Well,
and
you're in great shape.
I'm in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
I'm a tad overweight, but I've been just a little bit overweight most of my life.
And I'll talk about that in a minute after you
Go
do
ahead.
that,
No,
about
you go
why
ahead.
that's good.
Your
If you
turn.
get sick, you need some of that extra weight. I was just told that, a lot of people, as they're 90 and 95, maybe that they're just going to be thinner. But some of us, where we remember we were 10 to 20 pounds less, when you get sick in a week and you can't eat, you'll be very surprised what happens. So having an extra little bit of weight on you, as long as you're healthy, I think it's okay, because I've heard stories about that.
Pounds. I agree with you. I have a very close friend who was recently diagnosed with a cancer. And much of her life, she's about my height, which is about 5'5", 5'4", and but she has never been the least bit heavy. As a matter of fact, she's quite thin, only weighs about 90 pounds. She has had surgery, and now she cannot undergo her appropriate therapy because she has to gain 20 pounds until they can treat her.
Yep.
And she is having a very difficult time gaining anything. So I agree with you.
Yeah, just you kept, an extra 5-10 pounds, as long as you're exercising and all. I don't think it's the worst thing.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we eat right, eat lots of fish. Well, that's very important that we talked about that. But let's get back to what you said. We know exercise is important, but it's one thing, and you cover it in your book, actually. It's important to socialize. Now, I know you go fishing, but you have a friend, and the two of you can check with each other. You can talk. You have somebody you can count on. People can't hibernate.
No, this is so true. And it goes just beyond having a friend. You really got to hang on to those old friends. Don't let them go, even though they move away. Maybe they're not able to get out as much. Maybe they're not as social. Today we have the internet. Everybody has a computer. And if, as you get to be 70 and 80 and 90 years old, if you don't have one, you should. Because it's, in some regards, it's a lifeline. You can communicate with friends all the time. And not only that, you can entertain yourself. Just get on Facebook and you can entertain yourself an entire day. You can get lost on Facebook, everybody chatting to everyone else and telling their business and their private affairs. It's quite entertaining in some regards.
I'm very addicted to the YouTubes because you can see documentaries, you can see TED Talks, you can learn so much. So if you get a comfortable chair, or now you can have a sit-stand desk, because I've had one for 15 years, where right now I'm standing here in the studio, so I can do this. Now I'm tired, I sit down. You just push a button and the seat goes down. If you don't
They're
have
great.
one.
I do.
Yep. See?
I do. They're
now,
wonderful.
That's right. It's a
wonderful.
sit-stand
And mine
desk.
is not down very often, I'll tell you that.
Right.
Just every once in a while, when I feel a bit fatigued,
Yes.
I have to sit for a minute. But 90% of the time, I do my work standing.
And, when you think about it, when I went to shows to see historical plays, it always seemed like they were standing, like Abraham Lincoln, people like that. They were standing at their desks. I don't remember their sitting. They were writing, standing. It seemed like that was more common years ago. I mean, they didn't go up and down, but people stood.
Well, years ago, they didn't have those fancy desk chairs that we have today that do just about everything. And I agree with you.
So maybe
you look back, you see most of the great men in history always standing, doing their work and their thinking.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So it makes a difference. But actually, in your book, when we talk about people who are sick, we know that people can get Alzheimer's. I have a friend that has early Alzheimer's, and they have cancer, and we now have such great clinical trials, and people are surviving longer with these diseases. I think it's still important to go to support groups and have your families go to support groups where other people are suffering from the same disease. Otherwise, you're really alone with your thoughts, which could be very devastating. What do you think?
Support groups are essential in not just for cancer patients or Alzheimer's patients, but for people who suffer depression, and many, many other diseases. It is just good to be surrounded on occasion with people who have suffered a similar illness, or even someone who's lost a spouse or a loved one. It helps. And the data has proven that it helps over time, talking to someone who suffered a very similar occurrence. And sometimes you get ideas from them, you get encouragement from them, you get a little bit of sense of direction from people who have been through the same thing that you're suffering with. It does help a lot.
Yeah, and that's become, I think, extremely prevalent in most of the hospitals. They have support groups.
They all have support
they do.
groups.
In fact, I want to talk about hospitals for a minute, because you were in charge for so long. Years ago, everyone didn't want to go to a hospital because they said, I don't want to die there. But hospitals seem to be they're almost like country clubs now. They're so different from probably when you first started, aren't they?
They're very different, but I wouldn't use the country club scenario, because today the whole idea is to get the patient in and get the patient out. Hospitals are not the healthiest place to be. You go there and have whatever procedure, whatever it is you have to have done, your antibiotics, surgery, and then go home and recuperate, because that really is the best place to recuperate.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. I was being facetious, but they have changed.
Yes, they have. They are so much better. The accommodations are better. The rooms are bigger. Staffing is better than ever. Nurses are more highly skilled, and there's more support staff, not only to take care of you as a patient, but there's support staff for the family, for discharge. A lot of outpatient work today, a lot of outpatient work. Things that I can remember, in fact, I made reference to it, I think, in my book. Today, people with cardiac surgery go home in 5 days. I can remember when my sister had her first child, she was in the hospital for 5 days. So it's interesting how things have changed.
Yeah, they have. And what's happening now, though, even with health, is there are physicians who are making house calls again. They have home services for people who are bedbound. And that didn't happen. I have a particular physician, Dr. Mencia, that I have encouraged to do that. And now he has a whole staff that he sends out, because many people are home surviving and they don't even know what's wrong with them, and no one comes. They can't get to a doctor, and they're literally dying living there. And so it's very important that if you're alone, that you find an organization that will come and take care of you as a visitation.
And that's not always easy to do. United Way supports dozens and dozens of organizations, and sometimes people in need can just call, and they will direct them to the right association or to the right people that could help them out. But, you mentioned the physicians that are doing home visits today. Interestingly enough, they're and I said this previously, it's so important to have a computer, because many offices are, you're probably familiar with this Skype, and it's happening in more the rural areas right now, but It's going to come to the big cities pretty soon, where the patient can just see you at your home via the computer, talk with your doctor. He can even take a look at you, which is very helpful, and doesn't have to make that trip to the house, and could perhaps order antibiotics or something for you without ever having to go to the office, which is something all of us would like to not have to do.
Well, the other thing, though, following along with that is people do need hugs. People do need people, as they say, people,
so true.
Right? And it's really important that that people who you're with, whether it's your friend or it's a family member or it's a stranger, that they get a little bit of touch, a little bit of holding, because, and I know you probably know this being in this field, when you go to an Alzheimer's facility, the first thing that people want to do, they put their hands out to you. They want you to touch them. They want to hold you, because that's what they lack now. They don't have someone that touch is so important. That's why dog therapy, pet therapy is so important. Do you have a dog?
I have a cat who thinks she's a dog.
Okay, well, it's the same.
But we've known for years that animals have a wonderful effect on people who are alone or depressed or ill. I was responsible for some years, along with my other areas. We had a nursing home. And so once a week, and sometimes twice a week, depending on the kind of support we had, but we would have pet therapy days. And the people would come, and we had a lab retriever, a couple of the labs, because they are so sweet and so friendly. One lady came with a feral, those things that hang over your neck.
Oh, my goodness.
And then another lady came with 2 big, fat cats. They were the biggest cats I have ever seen. But the cats were such sweethearts. And to watch these older people who were in a nursing home, some of them hadn't seen a friend or relative in years, and when those cats came, they would put their arms around them, and they'd kiss those cats and dogs and love them to death. It was a sight to see.
I don't know if you know about this. I was going to feature it. I have to go back and find it. There's a Japanese, I'd call it an invention, where it's like a stuffed animal, but that it moves and makes noises, and they're using that with Alzheimer's patients.
I'm very familiar with that, and it seems to be helping.
Yes, it does, because they're alone in another world in their sense, and here's something that feels like it's real. Yeah. So that's what people are trying to come up with, to make, until the minute you close your eyes for good, to give you some quality of life.
Yes.
And I was just going to ask you, have you any other books you wrote, since this was one I never heard of before from you? Have you written other books?
Well, I have another book that's So You Want to Retire. It's all about retirement, but it's about the non-monetary aspects of retirement. Everybody writes about money in retirement and how important it is, and of course it is. I don't write about money. I write about how to figure out what to do in your retirement, because there are so many people that retire, they don't know what to do. They're bored to death. They haven't thought about what they're going to do when they retire. They haven't talked to their spouse or their kids. So, one day they're working 12 hours a day, and the next day they're sitting home waiting for lunch. When they finish with lunch, they're waiting for dinner. When they finish dinner, they watch television, go to bed. But there's so much that one can do to prepare for retirement. And today we know, I think there was an article in the paper even recently, something like 70% of people who plan to retire in the very near future expect to do some kind of work. Whether it's volunteer or paid work, you've got to have something in mind. You've got to think about it and decide before you leave your good-paying job, what are you going to do? You can't just stand around all day. It's a long day when you have nothing to do.
Right. It's funny. I say that to some retirees, and they say, I am busier now than when I was working. And I say, what are you doing? Of course, now they're getting to play the sports they want or to go fishing, what they're doing. And they plan this, and then they can go out and find the kinds of fresh fish and fresh food they didn't have time to do before, right? So it depends how you feel about retirement. I don't think I will ever retire. It doesn't mean that I will maybe work the 80 hours I work now, but I will say that I have books in my brain that I would like to write. I have places I want to travel to. I have lots of things to do, but as long as I can keep making a difference in some way, and that was something in your book, it's making a difference not only to yourself but to others.
And look, we have to recognize that as we age, we do get a little wiser. Hopefully, that's what has happened. And why not give back a little bit? Why not give it back to some of the young people? Go to the schools, read to the kids, volunteer, do something productive to help the younger generation. They need it. They need the wisdom of some of us older folks. Share it.
And also, adding to that, Pat, as a matter of fact, let me just tell everybody again, this is Pat Flury. She wrote the book, You're Never Too Young to Defy Aging, which we featured in Boomer Times, and it was very exciting because it's something people all want to know more about. But let me just go on with something. I had an author, I think it was in this, this past issue, and I don't remember one issue from the other anymore. And she had, I guess, about 5 children, and they were grown. And then someone asked her, would you mind fostering some children? And she said, well, yeah, I could try that. And without realizing, after she's fostering them, she winds up adopting them. So she had 2 adopted ones. And then they're growing up. But, now I think she's in her 60s. She looked really good. And the same agency said, oh, there's this girl, she's 10 years old, and she needs someone to foster her because they're going to send her back to the orphanage. I mean, she was right there where you're sitting right now telling me this story. And she said, well, she's, okay, said, I'll try it. And now, 5 years later, she's been adopted, and she's fantastic. So that's going to another extreme,
Sure.
But look the difference that woman has made.
She should be.
She is
Very proud of herself.
Well, she's
It's
also
good for her.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's good for her,
But
too.
it's good for her as well.
Yeah, she now has a daughter that she has really helped, and this girl is, now she's 15, and she was saying, well, of course, she has all the problems that a 15-year-old girl has, but so that's very extreme. Now, I'll tell you something else. Other kinds of you talked about pets, and you did it in your book too. People are going and helping at the pet shelters.
Oh, it's just like any other hospital. They need all the help they can get. Hospitals need help. The animal clinics need help. There are so many organizations out there that need help. And there's not enough of us older folks that are willing to give a couple hours a week. And that's about all it takes. Most of the volunteers, you just need to just give a half a day, and it makes a world of difference to the people, the animals, the kids. It's all about giving something back. That's just the way I feel. Give a little something back.
And I have been affiliated with some schools, with universities. And it's amazing how many retirees are going back to school. They're not going back to earn degrees, although there have been some. But many of them are going to take adult courses, learning languages and learning instruments. And I have a friend who's been an oboe player. She hasn't played the oboe in 20 years, and she went back to take classes, and now she's helping at a community at a chamber orchestra.
Well, everyone knows some of the tricks to try to beat Alzheimer's disease. And we know that trying to stimulate the brain is one of the key factors with Alzheimer's. And learning a new instrument is probably the best of the best.
You're right. So, Pat, you didn't know what we were going to talk about when you came on, but you can see we did it, and now I'm walking away with some fish. Please buy Pat's book. We're going to do it by going to, what's the website that we should ask for?
Direct to Amazon. It's
Amazon,
fine.
Pat.
Amazon,
That's right. It's called
Barnes
You're
and
Never
Noble.
Too Young to Defy Aging. Pat Flury, thank you for coming back.
Thank you. It's been fun.